Hello again, boys and girls. I am Brian Kuhn, and today we're going to talk about how to set up a Parametric EQ plugin in your DAW to mirror that of a large standard mixing console. Now, in trying to make sense of a complex device like an EQ, I find it's very handy to go to see what developers of large mixing console boards have done. It's actually quite easy to add more parameters and more options in a piece of software, but it's very expensive to do in a piece of hardware. So if we look at a large format mixing board and we look at the EQ sections there, we get a good idea of what the most important types of EQ are in any standard mixing context. So in this example, we'll configure an EQ the same way that a large format mixing board is configured. Now, the first thing that we have in most mixing boards is a high pass filter. Now, this is often in the input section, and it's designed to remove rumble during recording. And very often the very low information is not necessary. And remember, any information below the fundamental frequency of your instrument is most likely noise and rumble that you don't want there. So this is a very important type of EQ. Now, in this device, it's set to 75 Hertz. And in the example, it's at 18 decibels per octave. So we'll enable it, and we'll set it at 75 and change the gain to 18 decibels per octave. And I can enable and disable this as I need it. So the next thing that we see on a standard EQ in the mixing board is going to be the low shelving filter. So we can configure that now. It's interesting to note that the low shelving filter on this mixing board that I'm using as an example does not allow you to change the frequency of that filter. Instead, it's fixed at 80 Hertz. And we can see, so we'll go to 80 Hertz. Or we just type it. And you can see that by boosting or cutting that, it's going to give us quite a bit of bottom end bump. Perfect for adding weight to basses or warmth to keyboards. The next thing we see on our standard mixing console board EQ is going to be a low mid-range EQ. Now this is going to be bell-shaped and it's sweepable from 100 Hertz to 2000 Hertz. It can boost up to 15 decibels and cut up to 15 decibels. I think the 15 dB would be quite extensive for a boost. So I wouldn't boost, maybe a max of 6, but feel free to cut quite a bit. Now, on my mixing board filter, I can't adjust the width of these. That's something I can do in the software, though. And I can set the Q of a factor of, let's say, 1. Or we'll do 4. There we go. And notch. There's a good, nice notch filter there on that parametric. So it has quite a decent range that it can go through, and we can sweep on. Right now, I'll set the gain to 0. The next thing we see is a high mid-range, which is set primarily. Set similarly. And I'll set the Q also to 4 on this one. And it can sweep from 400 Hertz all the way up to 8K. There we go. We go back down to 400. Now again, this can on our standard mixing console can boost up to 15 and cut. And again, don't boost up to 15. That's a little excessive. Maybe 6, but feel free to cut that much. Now we'll go back to the gain of 0. And the final filter we have on our standard EQ is the high shelving filter, which would be found right here. And in this model that we're using, it's set at 12 kilohertz or 12,000 hertz. And that can boost or cut up to 15 dB. And again, same line of logic, 15 dB is a little excessive, but feel free to cut that much as needed. We'll set the gain back to 0. So there you go. We've configured an EQ to line up with the standard large format mixing board EQ section and have seen the important ranges and filters that we have. Now I would suggest using this as your starting point and saving it as your default preset. This way, every time you open up your EQ plugin, these filters will be there waiting for you and you're ready to mix. Or ready to mix effectively. So until next time, see you later, kids.